My name's Justin McClure, and I'm here today with
Will Sloan.
And you're listening to the Important Cinema Club. Or, sorry, the spooky Important Cinema Club. I'm making the sound of a devil fetus, probably impregnating a woman.
How about some,
Yeah, there you go.
those are just various fluids and icky, slimy, maggoty things, because this week on the podcast, we talk about the grossest Hong Kong filmmaker ever made, the king of sleaze, the Lucio Fulci of the Far East. It is Kuei Chih-Hung.
Kuei Chih-Hung, probably most famous for The Boxer's Omen, the, top of the heap gonzo Hong Kong insanity film.
A man best known for his horror movies, but who, like so many of the Shaw Brothers Studios contract directors, made dozens of films in all genres, from wuxia martial arts films to juvenile delinquent melodramas.
And he was the king of the international co-production, working with an Italian director on Superman Go to the Orient, and also the insane mix of German sex comedy and Shaw Brothers martial arts film, which goes under a bunch of titles in America. It's known as the Bod Squad, but it is most commonly known, I believe it's like the Seven Virgins of the Sea, or the Sea of the Virgins, or stuff like that.
So this is the kind of guy we're talking about today. This guy is a major discovery, folks. He's also somebody that I feel very underqualified to talk about because, like so many studio contract guys, it's just a vast filmography. There's so much in there, and I'm really discovering him this week. So I hope you guys will come along with us and be patient with us as we try to figure out who this guy is.
Well, I feel like people don't usually talk about him that much. The fact that he's not said in the same breath as Lucio Fulci or even Mario Bava, it's kind of insane to me.
Well, one reason is because the Shaw Brothers are their own auteur.
And also, the Shaw Brothers movies were not available for a long time.
And then when they became available in the mid-2000s, they all became available.
All at once.
If you went to any Chinatown video store,
specifically bootleg store, let's be honest,
stores, you would see a whole wall of these Shaw Brothers movies, and you wouldn't know where to start.
You have no historical context, because a lot of them, unless they're Chang-Chi or Lockhart Lung films, you're like, I don't know what this is. 72 Tenants? That's a famous comedy, right? Is that the one that I should watch?
And I think Chang-Chi and Lockhart Lung are, of all the directors at the Shaw Brothers, the two who are the most widely known. And even they are only sort of known.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, even someone like Chor Young, who did wuxia pictures, their styles are what kind of define what people know as the Shaw Brothers aesthetic. And Kuei Chih-Hung, he's working in the Shaw Brothers set, but I feel like out of everyone that we've mentioned, he's the one furthest away from that. You know, that set-bound Shaw Brothers style? He'll shoot on those sets sometimes, but he'll often go into the grimy streets of Hong Kong, or go to Thailand and show it as this exotic black magic-filled milieu.
So, a little bit of context for the Shaw Brothers. I know most people listening will know who they are, but just as a bit of a refresher, they were the big Hong Kong movie studio, not just martial arts movie studio, but movie studio.
The monopoly.
Yeah.
Movie factory.
That's right. And they were horrible in many ways, because they would put these poor stuntmen and directors and actors who didn't know any better under these very draconian contracts.
Yeah, a salary position that you had to do this many movies when they asked you to do it. No bonuses, no raises, everybody's paid the same.
Right, and basically everybody lived in the same building, and they made these movies all day. I mean, the other side of it is the movies are amazing.
Yes, that's right.
They're like any of those. Much like an old Hollywood studio, there's a baseline of technical excellence in a Shaw Brothers film.
You pointed out in your reviews this week, watching Kuei Chih-Hung's movies, that this kind of sleaze is not usually as technically polished as his pictures are.
Yeah, when I watch an American movie about subject matter like this, it's usually shot on 16 millimeter or really bad digital, and it looks like a snuff film that you found at the side of the road. But these are beautiful,
colorful,
widescreen epics.
And so let's start with, I would say, his most famous picture, The Boxer's Omen.
Right, and The Boxer's Omen was one of numerous black magic movies that the Shaw Brothers made in, let's say, say, the late 70s, early 80s.
In the wake of The Exorcist, Shaw Brothers wanted to jump on any fad. We're like, all right, let's make horror films. Horror films not really being a super popular genre in Hong Kong before that point.
And the Shaw Brothers at this point were kind of on the downturn.
So they're finding ways to stay relevant.
Yeah, because, I mean, Bruce Lee was the first guy to really put a chip in the Shaw Brothers' domination by signing with Golden Harvest.
Yeah.
And then from there were people like Jackie Chan, other Hong Kong luminaries who joined with other studios. The old Shaw Brothers martial arts style was going out of fashion.
Yeah, the Hong Kong New Wave was coming into popularity. Like, companies like Cinema City were starting to redefine the Cantonese comedy. There were just new flavors of movies that audiences that had been, enjoying Shaw Brothers film for so long were like, oh, wait, why don't we just watch this other stuff instead?
There were also shifting standards of acceptance of what could be allowed on screen in Hong Kong. And the Hong Kong horror movies that the Shaw Brothers produced really...
we're going to push it as far as it can go!
Absolutely. Now, yeah, as you said, The Boxer's Omen is probably his most famous movie. The plot... and this is not a plot-heavy movie, is that there's a boxer. He dies, and his brother goes to seek revenge for him, goes to this monastery, and from there on gets entangled in an ancient curse. I mean, that's the plot is much more complicated than that, but also much less complicated.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Because it is a series of grotesque, insane, unbelievable images. I mean, when I saw this movie for the first time, it was my first Hong Kong horror movie, and I feel like you had to, scrape me off the back of my seat.
What's fascinating about The Boxer's Omen is it's kind of an outliner to what most Hong Kong horror movies are, because it is dealing in grotesqueries and just look at it in ways that, my first one was probably a Chinese ghost story, or even Story of Riccio.
You know what? I saw those before this.
Yes.
But I'd never seen anything quite like this one.
And, I infamously, to Will Sloan and people who love Boxer's Omen, it's just, I don't like it that much, and I want to like it so much. It bugs me.
And this is strange to me because, I looked at it again this week, skimming through it to refresh myself to it. And I was once again sort of blown away by all the strange images in it. I mean, this is a movie.
It's filled with hallucinogenic stuff that you've never seen before.
Alligators throwing up spiders and people eating vomit and heads flying around. And there's a scene where a guy is shooting Buddhist scripture as laser beams. There's a scene where somebody I don't know how to describe it. They burst out of their own skin.
Yeah. I watched some of this director's earlier Black Magic films, and I suddenly understood why I didn't like Boxer's Omen so much. It's because his earlier Black Magic films, like Bewitched, I really loved. And I think it's because Boxer's Omen, which was one of the last movies that he made, was him kind of going, I don't really care about anything else. Let's just show this and let's just linger on it. It's just gross. It's not about any dynamic storytelling, or you don't really care what's going on. There is a scene where it's 3 guys in a row and they're just eating food, spitting it out, giving it to the next guy, and then that guy eats it, spits it out, and then the next guy eats it. And it's just...
What's your problem?
It's all 3 beats too long. That's what bugged me.
Okay.
It's there's a little, goblin man that comes out of a head. It's whoa, that's so cool. And then it cuts to a wide, and then it cuts back to a close-up of that little goblin man coming out again. And I'm like, all right, I got it.
See, that shot is so gross to me that I'm very happy just lingering in it for a while.
And he just lingers on it. It's almost... There's some interviews near the end of his career where he goes this is what, the friggin' audiences want. I'm just going to give it to them.
This is kind of what I like about The Boxer's Omen. Yeah. It feels like his hard-boiled.
But I'm just I got it. That's my issue with watching the movie.
Well, can I tell the listeners at home to just check out The Boxer's Omen?
You know what? Every time I talk about The Boxer's Omen, I say, check it out. Because I think that... it can be so shocking when you see it that you're like, whoa, this is unbelievable. I mean, I would say watch Bewitched, because that one, which is dealing all with the same territory, I found was more compelling, if only from a structural point, and just more stuff. It's about a man who is cursed by a woman in Thailand. We should point out that all these films are incredibly xenophobic. It's all about going to a faraway country, often Thailand, where an evil curse is put on you that then is taken back with the characters to modern day Hong Kong, which is also a hellhole.
These films also have issues with gender.
Yes, they do.
They are a little bit sexist.
But all the men in the film are also misogynistic monsters.
Yeah, and so one of the things I like about this guy's movies, which maybe goes, I don't know if like is the right word, but something that I found compelling as I kept watching them is there's no predicting them. Anything can happen. I marathoned a bunch of his movies, And I still feel very much like in a strange headspace from having been in that world for so long, because, you know, a movie will start as a black magic movie and it'll turn into a giallo film.
Yeah.
There will be long, boring stretches followed by just an image that'll punch you in the face that it's so unpleasant and evil.
Like any studio director, I feel that you can see the projects that he's like committed to and the ones that he's like, yeah, whatever, I just got to do this one because it's on contract. Yeah. I mean, he did a bunch of Hex movies. He did like Hex, which was a big hit. And then the other two, Hex After Hex and Hex versus Witchcraft, are just straight up comedies. Because he's like, I don't want to make these movies anymore. I just want to have some laughs.
And, you know, this is what I mean. It's like the films feel a bit like free associative writing. They feel like anything can happen. And they feel dangerous. And they feel like primal screams at times. I know that he himself in interviews said that he was interested in making socially conscious films. And he is. The films are often set in these very dirty and grimy lower class worlds.
Yeah, mostly apartment buildings where it's like very cramped. The doors are shut with like a cage door.
And as you indicated, he gets out of the set. Like he's often, you know, handheld camera in the streets. Even his wuxia film, Killer Constable, is very much out in the open air.
I mean, if people listening about this director want to see the grossest film he made, I would say that even grosser than Boxer's Omen is The Killer Snakes.
Oh my god.
Because that is a film that is just so punishing.
That movie is an assault.
Yes.
On the senses.
And I
watched it this week.
I know how it was pitched, which was Shaw Brothers Studios like, hey, Willard's really popular, which is about a boy and like who can control rats and he's friends with rats. Why don't we make one a guy who's friends with snakes? Kuei Chih-Hung, he just goes bananas with it. The titular guy who befriends snakes is the sleaziest, grossest guy ever. There are so many snakes in this movie, and you know, warning for people who don't like animal violence, you will see them brutally murdered left and right.
Yeah, so Killer Snakes, it was not my favorite of the movies that I watched this week. I don't know if I exactly liked it, but it just has a raw power that can't be denied.
Do you want to see someone roll around in like 100 snakes? You're going to see that a lot in this movie.
Yeah, so I'm going to tell you guys a little bit more about the plot of Killer Snakes, and I just want to like give you a little bit of a content warning here because there's a lot that's offensive in this movie. As you said, it's a Willard-like protagonist who's picked on by everybody in his town, and there's nothing lovable about him either.
Oh no, he sits in I guess he lives in an alley, just covered in nude photos of women that he just like pants and masturbates too.
He falls in love with this nice young woman who works at like a fruit stand somewhere, and they're gonna go on a date, but then her father dies and she is forced into prostitution to pay her landlady. And you know, sinister landlords and landladies are a recurring theme in Kuei Chih-Hung's movies. He doesn't know what happened, but he knows that the local brothel is evil, and he uses his killer snakes to go after everybody who has wronged him, particularly prostitutes.
And by go after, you mean put snakes in their vaginas, where the women then moan in ecstasy before they die.
So, I mean, I'm not endorsing this movie exactly. I mean, there's also a scene at the end. You're saying snake violence, animal violence, where just like one snake after another is like shredded.
Thrown in a fire. I mean, the film starts with a guy opening up a snake, taking out its poison glands, and then making like a delicacy out of it.
And so I watched this movie just sort of with my mouth agape that the major Hong Kong studio made it, and it played in theaters, and it's like beautiful. It has wonderful production values. It has, you know, great action scenes and everything. And I'm just, now it's time for...
How did this get made?
Yeah.
You know what? It was made because the people making it were like, it's going to play for 4 weeks in the theaters and then go be put in a vault somewhere, never to be seen again.
And so the fact that there's a class consciousness in the movie, there's a political anger in the movie, as well as just a lot of stuff that's really kind of evil and objectionable. That's the cocktail that makes Kuei Chih-Hung sort of interesting.
It's like you can have your cake and eat it too, right? Which is like, this is bad. And, you should be nice to snakes. Also, look at these snakes burning in a pile. It's like, holy shit.
Or there's a scene where like a guy's like throwing snakes in the air and he's just like slicing them with a sword.
Yeah.
Sorry, folks.
You snake lovers out there?
Yeah. In fact,
and chickens too.
Cruelty towards snakes and chickens are in just about all of these films.
You can't have a black magic ritual without cutting a live chicken's head off on
right.
camera.
It's culturally okay.
That's not what I'm saying.
That's exactly what you're saying. So, I mean, there are some other interesting films we can talk about. There's Corpse Mania.
Oh, I actually really love Corpse Mania, which is one that I struggled with many years ago because for the first 40 minutes, you're like, what is this movie about?
Yeah. Well, it's about necrophilia.
It is very lovingly portrayed as the man like cleans a dead body that's covered in maggots.
Oh my God. Well, that image, worthy of Lucio Fulci.
I mean, maggots left and right in this guy's filmography. He's the go-to. You want to see some maggots squirreling around?
He just loves anything abject, and he is spit and slime and vomit and piss and just fluid.
But what I love about Corpse Mania is that the latter half does turn into like a straight-ahead giallo with like a murderer running around brutally slaughtering people in like colorful environments.
Well, take the plot of this movie. There's a wealthy man who comes to the local house of prostitution and he says there's a sex worker there. He doesn't use the term sex worker. Mm-hmm. That's the term I'm using. There's a sex worker in the brothel who I want to buy her freedom.
But she's sick. Why would you want to buy her?
Well, he just wants to buy her, and then, oh my God! I mean, it's just so gross. I mean,
yeah,
the movie involves necrophilia. That's all you need to know.
Yes, it does,
and
in a loving way, because he's not truly the villain in this movie.
There is a twist ending.
Yeah,
yes,
there is.
But there seem to be a series of necrophiliac killings, and then in the second half. Yeah, it turns into a giallo, and there are stabbings.
And there's like a masked killer going around.
There's a great scene where somebody's face gets ripped off.
Oh, that's right.
And I cannot emphasize enough the technical excellence of these films.
That's right.
The fact that these are not, looking under a rock and finding just a strange relic that some weird person made.
Yeah, these are not regional horror films.
Yeah.
They're not Last House on the Left or anything like that.
I know that Kuei Chih-Hung was not a prestigious director. He was sort of in the second tier of Shaw Brothers filmmakers, but he was still working at the big company.
But according to like his screenwriters that worked with him, he was such like a perfectionist that stuff like Bewitched starts with like black magic coordinator, an actual real person, that he wanted to make these movies as good as he could within the studio system. Like, you look at something like Corpse Mania, it is as far away from the Shaw Brothers style as you can get. Lots of handheld, lots of on-location shooting, the camera never moving in the way that you kind of expect in environments that you've seen in hundreds of martial arts films.
I mean, this movie, there are those streets that you often see on the Shaw Brothers sets, but they're, covered in fog.
Yeah.
And, the sets and the real life just sort of intermingle. Like, the real streets, I mean.
Yeah, it's like I want to give you like a dynamic look at this stuff in ways that you've never seen before. And because of that, I can do shocking things that you're like, I wouldn't expect that to happen.
He also had a particular talent for like moody night photography. Killer Constable has some good dark scenes where the action is still very legible.
I think one of the reasons that he didn't really take off as a kind of cult figure is also because he doesn't have those recognizable genre films. If he had made like a monster movie, people would be like, oh yeah, that guy, I like that guy. Or if he had just made more martial arts film, like the one that you just mentioned, Killer Constable, is pretty much the only like pure serious martial arts film. He did another one that has the amazing name of Coward Bastard, but that one's not held in very high regard and actually didn't get a chance to see it. He made a Bruceploitation film as well.
He made a film with Bruce Lee called, I think, Iron Dragon Strikes Back.
Yeah, it's like The Gold something. It's not one, again, that's held in very high regard. And that was not a Shaw Brothers film, that was a Taiwanese production.
Right. So we should mention Killer Constable because this is the other film that he's made that's sort of close to being a classic. And this is a movie where, some gold gets stolen and the Empress Dowager says it's in ancient China, by the way.
Yes.
The Empress Dowager says there's only one man for the job. We got to hire the Killer Constable.
A Dirty Harry type, if you will.
And this man... he just loves killing and torturing people.
So this is like the social conscious side of the director that, gets mentioned a lot when people try to write essays about him, which is like this on paper looks like any other martial arts film. But because the lengths that he pushes it to. This main character is evil. Like, what he's doing is unnecessary, but within the confines of the genre, in any other context, it'd be fine. Like, this is what you do. You kill the villains. You have great martial arts fights. And it's all about, like, deconstructing that idea, and at the end, actually turning it on its head. It's like, oh, this person that you may have tried to convince yourself is the hero, he was never the hero. Even if you like, well, then why is he the protagonist?
And there's a strong class critique here, too, because, I mean, he is an ambassador of the upper classes killing the commoners.
And he's also puppeteered by the upper classes in something that he thinks is righteous.
Right.
And I think that's why his films are so interesting. And when you see something like Killer Constable, you're like, I wish he could have, like, continued to explore down these avenues, but because those black magic films are so popular, they were like, no, you gotta keep making these. I mean, I mentioned briefly that Seven Virgins film, and I think that it's one that people should check out because it is the best version of that you could ever see. So it's like, these, not actually 7, 5 women are
they virgins?
3 of them are, 2 of them are not, and that's a plot point.
Thank you for tallying that.
Yeah. They say
I am going to sue the Shaw Brothers.
They
for
say
false
it multiple times in the movie. And it's about these white women who are brought, and it's just so surreal, like, to a Shaw Brothers set. And I think the only uncut version is available in German, which is that was a production for. And the Shaw Brothers logo actually doesn't even appear at the beginning of the movie. Just the German production company does. And so they're brought into this kind of situation as slaves, and then are taught each of them a different style of martial arts. They're like, we don't have time to train you, so you all learn one different style, and then take on the villains that captured them in just epic battles that the director could have been like, just phone it in. Like, who cares? We'll just have nudity every other scene.
So you were showing me a scene from this Seven Virgins film where, so the women, who are not all virgins, despite the title, they're in their bikinis on the beach, and each of them is like
sword fighting
a different group of henchmen, and the camera goes from one group and then swoops to the right to the next group, and then swoops up to a balcony to where a third fight is happening.
Yeah.
That's a very complex achievement.
Yes, it is. And it's for a movie that the people, like the intended audience, will probably not appreciate that. So I think that's why Kuei Chih-Hung is interesting, because he is going that extra mile for this kind of stuff in genres that could only be described as disreputable.
Yes.
So he is like, and I mean, there's no other way to talk about him other than an exploitation director. Like, even early on in his career, like, he was making biker pictures like Killer on Wheels that are kind of slight remakes of Straw Dogs, or he made a lot of the anthology film The Criminals, which were like little short films that are about, like, torn from the headline really gross stuff in modern day Hong Kong.
Yeah, and I think this is maybe the key to appreciating him. It's like, yes, there are political statements in the films, but there's also a lot of stuff that is very objectionable. There's a lot of stuff that's very, very evil, and there's stuff that's gross, and there's stuff that and it's just one big, it's,
one big stew.
Much like the pot of organs and babies in Bewitched.
Unborn fetuses, if you will.
Excuse me, unborn fetuses.
Oh, there's a scene in Bewitched that's so gross, where he has to go to, like, a funeral home and get, like, the juices from, like, a dead pregnant woman and just shooting out of every, like, hole in her belly. And then she's all rotten too.
I mean, truly disgusting. And
yes, it is.
Maggots everywhere. So, I mean, you've got to enjoy that.
Yes. I mean, because as cinema viewers, if you get into horror, there's like stuff that you want to see, right? You want to be shocked.
You want nightmare imagery. You want stuff to really surprise you, to get under your skin.
And that's what you'll get here. Yeah. And it's a shame, and me and Will kept saying this all week, that, reading about this director's life, it was never really appreciated. Killer Constable was a flop. That's why he didn't make any other martial arts films. His last few films just struggled, and eventually he just retired from the industry when the Shaw Brothers essentially turned into a TV company, and he moved to California to start a pizza parlor.
He died in 1999 of liver cancer. So, and he was just serving pizza in Hollywood. I mean, God, can you believe it? I mean, like, if you were in LA in the 90s, you may have walked into his pizza parlor. You may have been in the presence of greatness and you didn't know it.
And he probably didn't even know it. No one appreciated him. Nobody cared about him. That's how he could walk away. And even now, it's not like big retrospectives of his films are being thrown. I mean, they are, the Hong Kong Cinema Archives did write a book about him and did a retrospective. So he is being kind of rediscovered there, but there hasn't been any of that international kind of breakthrough. Where were the American companies? Well, like, why the hell weren't they, like, dubbing Boxer's Omen and, like, flooding the grindhouses?
Yeah, who knows?
I don't know, yeah. Who knows? Too foreign, I guess. And, racism. All right.
I know, you just think about some of the movies that were, like, considered cult classics in the 80s.
Yeah.
And, like, Boxer's Omen, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I it is frankly such bullshit. You watch some of these Shaw Brothers movies and you think that in the Western world, what was considered
good, competent,
what was considered fun, escapist entertainment was like a shitty James Bond movie. Like a View to a Kill was being released in theaters and people were accepting it as okay while Killer Constable was being made at the other side of the world.
Yeah, and then like if those directors did end up going to Hong Kong or bringing Hong Kong people in, they're like, oh yeah, we know how to shoot action, not you who work in the smaller industry.
Yeah.
Ugh, the worst.
So, much to explore there. I know that my time with Kuei Chih-Hung is not up yet.
Like you said, you're like, I wish I could have watched all of his films this week. And I just, our time on Earth is short.
And plus, I probably need a bit of a break from him for just a week.
That's right. So the nightmares can finally stop.
Do we have any letters this week?
We do have letters. As per usual, you can send us letters at importantcinemaclubpodcast@gmail.com. This letter is from Marco, not the one that we know, Will, and it goes, Dear Important Cinema Club, Marco from Switzerland here. I discovered your podcast lately because I had heard Will Sloan Esquire on the Sleazoids podcast, in which Will Sloan hilariously first showed the Sleazoid boys the stunningly melancholic Lugosi Karloff masterpiece, The Black Cat, and then made them watch hardcore porn.
The hardcore porn film was Widow Blue by the great Walt Davis,
which I had listened to because Chapo Trap House's very own Matt Christman had gone on their show to talk about the absolute masterpiece that is Gremlin 2. I greatly enjoy your podcast. I'm always amazed at your enthusiasm and your willingness to dive into even the most bizarre curiosities like Bela Lugosi meets a Brooklyn gorilla. Ooh, I hope that's our new detour. Everybody's like, I finally watched that movie. Hardly anything in the podcast world gives me as much joy as Justin's excited laugh. Oh, that's nice. Aww. You may be the only person to ever say that. All right. Your episode on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series was really good. Thank you. So I wondered if you were familiar with Christoph Schlingesieff's German Massacre, the first hour of reunification. Maybe you've talked about this director before and I forgot, but the guy deserves another mention anyway. He was a very prolific artist in film, theater, opera, and performance art, often driven by his commitment to left-wing causes. His movies are very irritating, but in a strange way, watchable. I think, and I'd like to hear your take on them. German Chainsaw Massacre is a film he very quickly produced. It's a political satire on the way German unification was carried out rather as an annexation rather than a real unification of two parties based on equal footing. So in that movie, very shortly after the end of the German Democratic Republic, DDR citizens go out to explore West Germany, to which they hadn't had access before, but quickly they fall into the hands of an insane butcher family who proceeds to make sausage out of East Germans. The film is outrageous and cheap in many ways, not actually appealing, but still interesting in a neurotic way. Greeting from Switzerland's Marco.
You showed this film somewhere,
I did not show it, but I wrote an essay on it.
Right.
Because a German kind of Cinematheque organization in Toronto commissioned me to write an essay about it. And I had actually not seen the film before. And what the writer of this letter says is completely right. They're very unpleasant, kind of energetic films that are doing riffs that seem kind of similar, but then push it too far in another direction. But what I think what's interesting about this letter is that, like we were talking about the director this week, that's a director that nobody talks about. Mm-hmm. Because his films are so extreme, but also speak to a localized phenomenon that people think that, like, oh, well, it won't actually translate because people won't understand. But, like, it's very simple. Like, I just read it, and it's like, oh, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, German Chainsaw Massacre.
German Chainsaw Massacre. I also checked out the other director's films, and they are all basically, like, kind of genre-ists, but pushed into experimental art house territory where they do genuinely become unpleasant. So, listeners, I'm sure that almost nobody has heard about that director, so if you need something transgressive to watch this Halloween season, check it out. Speaking of transgressive things, Impossible Horror is now available on Amazon Prime.
Oh, nice. Check it out.
Yep, that's right. If you have Amazon Prime in the US or the UK, you can check out the feature film that I wrote and directed. Now you can watch it for free, you cheapskates. But, if you're watching on Amazon Prime, make sure you watch to the end, because I get paid by the minute, baby.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, and and folks, if they like it, I believe there's a Blu-ray of it they can get on
Impossible Horror, impossiblehorror.com.
Impossiblehorror.com,
yeah.
Which has, how many commentary tracks did you record on that?
7, I think?
7.
Yeah, if you go to goldninjavideo.com and you also go to impossiblehorror.com and you order them on either site, it's actually the same store, so it'll go out in the same shipment.
You know what I gotta do? I gotta put it on and go to my Cameo and listen to every commentary to see...
And what we say at that moment?
Yeah, like, is it different observations about me, or do you never acknowledge me, or do you acknowledge me half the time?
We just make fun of you.
Are they like, hey, why isn't Will doing a commentary?
We made a joke about someone, and that person messaged me days later and be like, hey, you guys made a joke about me. I won't say who it is, but it's on one of those commentary tracks. Yeah, and if people haven't checked out Gold Ninja Video, we announced it last week. I released Flesh Freaks, a shot-on-video film from the 90s with new commentaries, new transfers, all that other fun stuff, and Kung Fu Zombie, speaking of Hong Kong horror.
Flesh Freaks, you told me this.
Yes.
Adam Naiman is in it.
Adam Naiman, Toronto film critic. Yeah, he is in it. He gets killed as a zombie in the movie.
I mean, what more do you want?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there are no stars in the heaven, for they're all on screen.
In Flesh Freaks. I explained the movie last episode, but check it out, goldninjavideo.com. These movies will not be on there forever. Three Stooges is still available. So if you get like those two Blu-rays, and you also get Three Stooges, shipping is not that much compared that if you would order them individually. Because of the way Canada Post works, terrible shipping. Like, someone said that it costs less to ship it to Belgium than it costs for someone to be shipped to Toronto.
Oh, sorry, guys.
Yeah. But if you order them, because it works per kilogram, and if you get over 100, it's essentially the same for a while. So, why not just order 3? Get that Three Stooges before it's gone, and you're like, why didn't I get that? Listen to the great commentary me and Will did on that release. The best Three Stooges experience you could ever have.
Can't wait to do our next Blu-ray.
Yep. This week. Coming soon.
Yeah.
Something that we've talked a lot about.
Yes.
But I'm excited to actually dive in and be able to do a 90-minute dive. Oh, actually, more than 90 minutes. Probably a 2-hour commentary track. But we'll talk about that when it comes. All right, so what are we doing next week? Oh, before that, what's on our Patreon, Will?
We revisit the cinema of Abel Ferrara, who was episode number 2.
One of the rare episodes recorded not in Important Cinema Club HQ, so it's a little bit more hollow.
That's right. We watched his 1995 vampire film, The Addiction.
And we essentially talk about that movie and, just do a redo on Abel Ferrara's career and our thoughts on him. And next week, we're doing Vincent Price. You got a Vincent Price impersonation up your sleeve?
I'm Vincent Price. No, I don't.
That's more Peter Lorre-ish, yeah. You work on it.
Welcome to my house on Haunted Hill. No, that is Peter Lorre. I don't know how to do a Vincent Price.
It seems like someone that people imitate all the time. I think Bill Hader had
here's the thing. I was trying to do Bill Hader doing Vincent Price.
Yeah, that's right. So Vincent Price, one of the granddaddies of horror cinema, along with people like Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee.
So, what should we watch? House of Wax.
Yeah, we should have had this conversation before.
I don't know. Let's
brainstorm.
Yeah.
Do you want to do
something by Corman?
I was gonna say Last Man on Earth, which is him on the outskirts.
That could be
when he was
fun.
doing an independent production, and then a Corman film, I don't know,
House of Usher.
Yeah, House of Usher. One of the big grandstanding Vincent Price roles, and then we could talk about him as the Eggman as well on the Batman TV show.
Right.
All right, so that's what we're doing next week. And until then, I'm Joseph Glue.
I'm Will Sloan.
Thanks for listening.
Snoochie Boochies, Justin and I
had a pilgrimage.
Yeah, so we went to see the new film Jay and Silent Bob reboot.
Will said he was going, and I was like, I'm going to see it at some point, so I might as well see it now, just get it out of the way. But then, as I was sitting and the movie was about to start, I was like, I didn't even see Tusk. Maybe I wouldn't have seen it. No! And then
you haven't seen Tusk?
No. Why would Why?
I don't know. You see lots of stuff. I figured you would have seen that one.
I'm good.
Have you seen? Yeah, of course you've seen Yoga Hosers.
Yes, I've seen Yoga. We watched it together. Yeah. And I saw Red State as well.
Yeah, Red State I thought was okay.
Yeah, Red State was interesting because it was, when we talked about this on multiple Kevin Smith, we'll do like a big Kevin Smith 7-hour like compilation on vinyl that people can just listen to us talk about him. But
Red State was the last one where it looked like he was trying
new stuff
and trying to go to an audience beyond his podcast audience.
But he got too big for his britches, and he essentially just burned anybody within the industry who would be interested in him doing something different.
Now, the thing about Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, the film Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, when it came out, seemed like the height of self-indulgence.
Yes.
This movie, I mean, if you are not...
Well, it's for no one other than people who are like... I guess, what is it?
Deeply immersed
yes.
in his life and history. Because there's a scene, you remember when he was too fat to fly?
Of course I do.
There's a whole scene.
I was a podcast listener at that point.
Yeah, there's a whole scene about that incident.
And if you don't know what they're talking about, it's just going to go over your head, which a lot of the scenes in this movie did. I was just like, I don't know what's going on.
So Kevin Smith is a character in this film because Jay and Silent Bob need to go to Hollywood to stop the Blunt Man and Chronic reboot from happening. And it's going to be directed as a big Hollywood superhero movie by the filmmaker Kevin Smith.
Yes.
So he's in it as himself.
They do nothing with that joke.
So I thought that there was going to be a joke about how ridiculous it was, the idea of Kevin Smith making a big comic book movie. Nope. No, I mean, Kevin Smith is presented in this movie as like the god of Comic-Con.
Wouldn't it have been great if he was like washed up and he had tried a bunch of stuff and they're like, remember when you were going to make the Green Hornet? Now you're just a loser.
So there are a lot of quote-unquote self-deprecating jokes in this movie.
Yes.
All of which are just totally flattering to him. Because everybody is always like, oh, you mean the guy who made Cop Out? That fucking sucked. And it's like...
Nobody remembers Cop Out.
Yeah, who thinks about Cop Out? Nobody thinks about Jersey Girl. Nobody
Except
thinks...
for us.
Yeah, well, we do. But nobody does. I mean, when ordinary people hear the name Kevin Smith, they maybe think, oh yeah, Clerks.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Not even Mallrats.
Not even Mallrats.
Yeah. So this movie has our favorite heroes, Jay and Silent Bob, like you said, going on an adventure. And I like to say that this movie feels like it's made up of 5 scenes, because every scene just goes on forever.
Well, certainly there are like 5 locations that we keep returning to.
Hey, you want to go back to movies twice? Because you're gonna.
Yeah, and you can tell that all the scenes at the fast food place were probably filmed in a day.
Yes.
I mean, this movie is really low rent.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's for such a specific audience that doesn't need to look as slick as Jay and Silent Bob, which even in of itself look kind of cheap.
I sort of have some small affection for this movie just because it is so... like it was made by a person.
Yeah,
it's like, so nobody else made this movie, and it's for nobody except him.
You know what? You know who else it's for? Jason Mewes, who gives a very committed performance.
Yeah, and I mean actually Jason Mewes is not that bad in this.
No,
movie.
He's not, and he's actually forced to do a lot of weird, heavy lifting that he's never had to do in any of the other movies.
And I find that like kind of weirdly touching. It's like, this is just some guy. He was just a weird kid that Kevin Smith knew 25 years ago, and now here we are 25 years later, and he's doing big dramatic beats.
Yeah, Antoine Duanel.
Duanel, yeah. It's like Boyhood.
Yeah, that's right. Because the film reveals that Jason Mewes had a daughter with, everybody remembers, Shannon Doherty?
I know it was Elizabeth, the one from
American Pie. Yeah,
Shannon Elizabeth.
There you go. And he has a kid played by Kevin Smith's daughter.
Yeah.
And Jason Mewes, his whole kind of character from that point on, because like up until then, I'm like, it's so lame. It's just the same thing. But from then on, it's like this like tortured Jason Mewes is like, how do I raise a daughter? Like, what am I supposed to do? There's one point where she's like, yeah, I just want to meet my dad, but you know, why doesn't he want me? Essentially that scene from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Heavy, dramatic.
Yeah, and Jason Mewes is like, yeah, your dad, you know, he's just like a piece of shit. And
Yeah.
it's like, what is this movie? Because then the next thing, it's like Chris Hemsworth as a hologram being like, hey, it's me.
So there are a lot of scenes where Kevin is calling in favors.
A lot of scenes.
I mean, a friend of ours noted that it was like, okay, he had a heart attack, and this is like the funeral that he would have had. Like,
you know, I was actually a little bit bummed that there wasn't more cameos, because there were long stretches where I'm like, all right, just give me someone that I recognize.
The Matt Damon cameo. which it looked like he Skyped in.
Yeah. Well, he's in a church somewhere, but I feel maybe Kevin Smith wasn't there when they shot it, because it is one shot.
Yeah, and he just looks at the camera and says, "Hey, you may remember me from Dogma."
And the whole joke is that, like, oh, the Loki character turned into the Bourne character?
Yeah.
That was the joke?
Yeah,
And you're like,
yeah.
But you know what cameo is moving is a Ben Affleck cameo, because when this movie was being made in production, they were like, Ben Affleck's never going to be in this film, because he and Kevin haven't spoken in like 10 years.
Yeah.
And then somehow it came together that he showed up, and it actually starts with Ben Affleck essentially breaking the fourth wall and being like, hey, man, I haven't seen you in years, and like giving a hug to Kevin Smith.
I enjoed seeing Ben Affleck in the movie.
Yeah.
That was an emotional moment. That
Running
almost
through
landed.
Kevin Smith's script for Chasing Amy 2 in like 8 minutes.
And a lot of, heavy Ben Affleck inside. Like, the whole movie is just like a nostalgia critic video.
Yeah,
like,
he was the bomb in Batman, right?
Yeah, it's like Bruce Wayne's mother.
Yeah.
What's her name
again?
Yeah.
There was one uncomfortable part where Ben Affleck's like, they just try to put diversity in movies all the time. Or maybe it was
And
somebody
the
else.
audience applauded.
And we're like, oh boy. And, looking across the audience, there was a lot of people there.
Yeah.
But it wasn't sold out.
Yeah.
So is Kevin Smith's audience dwindling? This is a question that we were asking ourselves afterwards with, is he getting new fans? And I say, no.
Probably not, but I was wondering, I was genuinely curious is there an audience who has discovered him on podcasts or on like the Comic Book Man show?
I can't imagine, because like the Comic Book Man show was canceled.
Yeah.
And when we came into his orbit, it was probably pre-Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back.
Yeah.
So that was right after Chasing Amy. What happened after Chasing Amy?
Dogma.
Dogma, right. So I think Dogma was the first movie that I saw him in.
Yeah.
And at that point, he was always kind of like leveling up is what the word
Yeah.
He was doing more stuff. Remember, he was on Entertainment Tonight. Like, he was doing skits on Jay Leno.
Right.
Like, he was a figure that it didn't feel like a niche thing where it's just kind of running in circles, which is what it is now.
Well, you remember Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back was supposed to be...
Of course I do.
His farewell to that world.
Yes. And now he's just doubled down because he's realized, like, all right, this is what the fans want. Like, that's the audience that I have. I'm not going to find new people. It's like Jersey Girl or Cop Out.
I mean, he's not talented.
No, he's
so,
not.
Well, yeah, why not?
And like Clerks, his best movie, is a film that just came out of that moment in time when he made it, and that's why it's good. And he can't really capture that anymore. So, buckle up for Clerks 2, I guess. Clerks 3. That's
well,
right.
I gotta say, I had a great time watching the movie with you. It was just super fun to be out there and be reunited with all our old pals. Jay,
That's right.
Silent Bob, Jason Lee, Ben Affleck. Amy, no, she's not Amy in the movie. All the characters.
Joey Lawrence, and all that stuff. Yeah, I did like that. Ben Affleck just says, maybe I wasn't the right man, a white cis male to tell the Chasing Amy story. Stares into camera. But you know what? Yeah, I mean, you can never go home again, because like the movie ended, it was like just a bunch of bloops and behind the scenes, and we were like, I can't do this.
Oh yeah, because we went to the Fathom event screening, and there was another hour of content at the
Two
end.
introductions.
Oh my god.
It's like, no more, please. I've had enough.